Hello and welcome to the Glory Talk podcast, a ministry of Glory Dance. I'm your host, Roz Mignona.
Join me now for part 2 of my conversation about homeschooling with my good friend, Michelle. Remember that the Lord calls each of our families to different things, and for us, it's home educating. No matter what the Lord has called you to, I hope you really enjoy the topics we discuss and our different experiences so far. Here we go.
When I see your family, this idea of teaching your kids why you're doing things, the why behind it is probably why I'm so impressed by your children, because it's like, if I talk to the boys, they would absolutely defend the fact that they're homeschooled and tell me all of the reasons why they love being homeschooled and why it's important that they're homeschooled. At least, I don't know, I haven't really talked to to James, the youngest boy, about this, but I'm assuming it's the same, where if I said, do you guys want to go to public school? It's not just like, no, we wouldn't want to go. There's actually like very specific reasons why. And I love that your home education and parenting philosophy has a lot of that behind it. This is why we do things. And that is something that as a parent, if you haven't taken the time as a husband and wife with children, or even preparing to have children, to discuss your family's mission statements on things, your purposes behind things, because when I talk about like homeschool philosophy and all this, that's really what we're talking about. It's making sure that before you do anything or pick a curriculum or go off on tangents with your life and with your plans, be really settled in that reasoning, that purpose, the why behind what you're doing every single day. And I think that will, even if your kids don't choose those exact things for their life when they're adults and they move off, if anything, you've taught your kids this concept of being convicted and having this foundation in their life, and that you as parents decided this in your marriage and in your family, and then did that with your children. And I think that's really profound and impactful. So tell me more about that.
How I did that. I think we just live our life very raw and open with our children. And so I use the kind of the philosophy with like soda or candy, if you just say you can't have this, and then just, all these rules, as soon as they're out of the house or with another family, and they're offered that, they're going to take it because it's like, oh, mom's not here, But it's funny because my kids, they have their own convictions. So, as far as candy, we don't eat corn syrup. So if it has, high fructose corn syrup, it's not good. Like it causes inflammation, and, it's just something that we as a family don't do. So like our ketchup doesn't have corn syrup in it. And when we're out and they only have a ketchup that has corn syrup in it, they will not eat that ketchup. Like there's nothing I can do to get them to eat that ketchup. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't remember if we watched a documentary on it, but it's just for them, it's like, it's a no-go zone. Same with syrup or something like that. But it sounds so dumb in that, but in that analogy, but it's like, if you don't teach them the reason why we don't eat that, or the reason we don't do this, or the reason that we don't drink alcohol, is this, and we live it out. And I think it would crush my children if all of a sudden we're like, never mind, we've decided, in our home, we could do this, but when we're out and we have this other image, and I think if we like, there's words that we don't use. We don't call people stupid, or we don't even say that, like, that's stupid. That's a very bad word in our home. And so if it ever comes out, like, because we're sinners and we say things, but oh my gosh, you'd be like, my kids will be like, oh, you said that word, you know, like, so it's our own family culture, but I think it just really stems from living it out in front of them. And I'm the first to tell my kids that I'm a sinner and that this is, you know, this is my background. Like, this is what we looked like before we knew Jesus. So they know like that it's really only through him and through grace that, you know, we've been saved, and it's not of anything that we do. But I think honestly, just living out these convictions and sharing the why with them. It's like, hey, we don't drink alcohol because, you know, it talks about that there's, you know, it's not edifying, but it's like we're a new creation in Christ. And so those are old skins. You know, we don't want to put on our, you know, old skins and have this new wine pour, you know, like, you know, you can use Bible analogies, but at the same time, I'm like, that used to be who I was. That's not who I am today. And, you know, the Bible talks about being sober minded. So that's just one conviction that we have in our own family. But I'm just saying that, like, because we have all these other things, you know, it's doing life with your children every day. So it's like having a big mirror on your forehead. Like, so if you see something that you don't like in your children, you know, you have to kind of check your heart, because it's like, wow, I'm really their biggest influence. Are they picking that up for me? You know, stuff like that.
And I think that vulnerability and that openness to let your kids know that you make mistakes too, and that we're all in need of a savior, that's so important for kids to see lived out as well, because, you know, they need to see how we handle mistakes. They need to see how we do things. And my kids are very strong-willed. 3 out of 4 of them, I think, are the red temperament, where they're very strong-willed. And, you know, Eden's in gymnastics, so she's always been part of, you know, worldly groups of kids. And so we've kind of worked on this throughout the years, especially now that she's in that preteen age, where we need to be even more open with her about why we do the rules. And for instance, this show I talked about, we let Eden watch it, and she was kind of like, well, I can see why that girl is rebelling so much, and I can see why she wants to know more. I mean, they never even let her sip a soda before in her life. I mean, you know, and just the things that she was saying, and some of the pushback we get about, like, no, we're not going to see the show, we're not going to wear those clothes, we're not going to, you know, and it's at this age with a preteen girl, it's like constant, you know, we just didn't want it to be about the rules. And we got to the point where we decided to watch a documentary about human trafficking and the pedophilia and issues that are happening in Hollywood with her, because it was to the point where she really needed to understand that there is a very serious reason behind why we choose to avoid certain things, or even things like not having a silly little witchcrafty show in the house. There's a reason why we don't let those things in. And so we're learning that more and more as the kids get older, how important it is to share our conviction and be even more honest, and in a safe, and like you said, like, not beyond their age. For instance, this video we watched isn't for all 12-year-olds, but we know it's appropriate for this particular kid. But it worked. I mean, it worked to have her realize, like, whoa, this is a big deal. Right. She's very interested in spiritual warfare and understanding that more. So for us to take life to another level and reveal to her these way more serious reasons why we choose to do things and to not do right. do things. It's effective. And it was like, that's all that was needed. We didn't need to create more discipline on it and be more harsh and do the because I said so. Like, as we raise these kids that think for themselves and develop their own convictions, I feel like, okay, yeah, we have to also give them reasons to have those convictions and really let them know. And you know what's funny is I feel like in doing that, we end up letting our kids know way more than normal public school kids would know. I mean,
Right.
when I was teaching high school, I felt like a lot of the kids that were homeschooled were way more aware of a lot in the world than the regular kids, that wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say my kids are sheltered in any way other than, we don't choose to watch movies that are, well, if it's like, The Patriot, for instance, and that's rated R, it's like that really did happen. So, like that's how we started when they were really young. Like my husband was like, well, I think that they should know what war looks like. And then as far as like why we had to keep our kids safe when we were in the shopping store, and like Janie would like go underneath the clothes and hide. And so then Chris was talking about like Adam Walsh and sharing what happens, and it was like I was like, oh, do we need to tell them, and he's like, yeah, you do, because this is a real threat. And then there is predators out there. So I think absolutely in this day and age that you have to be a lot more willing to share your heart with them out of, and it's not out of, I'm not trying to be, it's not you being mean or you versus them. It's let me share what's really going on out there. So Jane and I did Operation Underground Railroad had the Rise Up event. So for human trafficking. And so she and I went and but yeah, we had a lot of talks about, what sex trafficking is and human trafficking. And so
yeah,
it's sad. It's the world we live in. But yeah, and even my boys, it's like I've actually shared more with Jane. She asked more questions. So, they're very like, I can't believe you told her that. And I'm like, but she's asking questions, and I will never deny her of an answer if I can give it to her. So, we have a lot of heart to hearts, and I think it's because she's very curious. So depending on their age and maturity level, then it's like, don't hold anything back unless it's, detrimental.
That's precious, because that's the age, 9-10 years old into the young teen years is when kids will back away from their parents and feel like they need to find answers to their questions in other places. And it's really a gift when your kids are coming to you to ask questions. And I think we need to be ready to emotionally, and always be handling those questions without any, obviously not judgment, but even our reactions to when our kids ask us about certain things, or there are certain things that come up where like it's almost like this feeling of embarrassment, or like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're asking that. And you got to stay cool and collected and be willing to be as honest as you think they can handle, for sure.
Right.
Well, what do you think, as you look back over the years and where you are now with the homeschooling, but also just all of this family culture, what do you identify as mistakes or things you wish you did differently?
Well, I think that, what's that Teddy Roosevelt quote? Comparison is the thief of joy. I think I've had a lot of joy snuffed out, because you do compare. In the homeschool community, I think that we're really hard on ourselves. We have these expectations of what their, grade friends are doing. And so you're having, all this, and then these expectations from the curriculum, and we just put a lot on ourselves. I mean, we're moms, we wear a lot of hats. So if I can go back and change anything, it would be just to not compare ourselves with someone else, or not to think myself as ill qualified, because it's like the Lord gave me these children, so he knows what he was doing when he gave them to me, so he's going to see us through. But I think what I've learned mostly, and I think dealing with autoimmune disease, and like we've had a lot of different seasons that weren't always amazing, but at the same time, it's like he was faithful. And some days, like Jane nursed all the time. So I can't tell you how many, we would just sit there in my bed and read while I was nursing, because that girl was always hungry. And, so it just looked very, very different for a lot of years. And this year, the season, we have my grandma living with us. So we're living a life, really vulnerable with a different generation that isn't really pro homeschooling. So we have, other ideas of what that's supposed to look like. And I'm like, sorry, this is how we, live life. So, I would just say, if I could go back, it would just to be not so hard on myself, and just to really let go and let God do the work. I would still say, get out of bed and do this, but, without that guilt. I think mom guilt is real and the struggle is real, but, after seeing how quick it goes, really, as, moms, we just need to enjoy our children in that season, because there's another season that's coming. There's valleys and there's mountains, and sometimes you're in the valley a lot more than you're at the top of the mountain, and then it's all gone, and then you're I'm like, I'll have a clean house someday, but right now it's like, my kids do the dishes and they're not always clean. And so I'm like, well, I could beat them up over it, but I'll just wash the cup better, but
yeah,
it's just, seasons look very, very different. And I think as moms, especially homeschool moms, like I said, that we really rob ourselves of joy, because it is, the world is out there. And I think stay off Pinterest, because I think Pinterest makes everything look lovely. And I'm a girl who really desires things to be lovely and curriculum to be lovely. And then I'm like, oh, this isn't working for us. But it's, because I realize is that, we are a different dynamic of a family. And so, we have one that has more of a learning disability. So we go a lot slower on certain things with him, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, like, I really like who he is and his character. And, and so I don't think that that's ever going to be an issue. Like, what age were you when you learned to read? Like, I don't think these are the questions that they're going to get when they're in their 30s. But, at the end of the day, it's like, there was a time where I thought, I need to send him to some school to teach him, because I can't do this. And those days were dark, where you really do beat up yourself, because you're like, should I have sent them? So you're always, questioning, are you enough? And, I think that's the problem. And, with all these moms that are now in a position where they're homeschooling, I think they, either they're homeschooling now because of COVID, because they saw, wow, my kids like not learning based on what they're doing, or they really appreciated having their child home and like, I could do this, how hard could this be? Because it's not hard. You literally had these children, you nurtured them when they were a baby, but all of a sudden they turn 5 and you're like, okay, let the state do it.
right.
Something's wrong, but it's just you only do what you know. Like I always say, I'm like, everybody's just doing the best that they can. We're all doing the best we can with what we've been given. The ones that are homeschooling, I think it's the Lord, like, who's just given that calling, and you're just, that conviction is so much of a burden that you have to say yes, because it like haunts you at nighttime. But
yeah, and if you believe that God has called you to homeschool, and this is and you've decided to do it, you've declared it, you better believe the enemy's going to be right there tearing you down.
absolutely.
Comparison is absolutely, I agree, over all of our years, it's been the comparison. When you really take everything away, all the problems that we've had, it comes down to the comparison of I was just trying to make it look like this, whether it was the picture or the activity that someone else did that totally was a fail in our house, or the book that I thought was going to be perfect and it made everybody and it made mom and kid just freaked out and crying and just so upset. And I think it's really important that anyone that might listen to this knows that Michelle and I both have had really bad days, really bad days. And I remember a friend of mine during COVID when the kids suddenly were all home, and she posted on Facebook, and I happened to jump on Facebook, and it was the first thing there, and she was like crying with her preteen daughter, and her daughter was crying, and I called her, and she was like, "Did you just see that Facebook post?" I'm like, "Yep," because I was like, "You just need to get away. Like, does she have to do this project because she's doing school at home?" Because if she doesn't have to, just unplug and go do something fun and just eliminate, redeem the day. And they ended up dyeing her hair crazy colors, and that's what they did. It was super fun because at the moment they were not enjoying each other. And what you said is enjoy your children. Exactly. That's a choice. Joy is more often a choice. I mean, there's the joy of the Lord. There's different forms of joy. There's the joy where we get to experience the Lord's joy. There's joy from the Lord. But I want to say the joy of the Lord is our strength. It's not our joy that's our strength. It's the Lord's joy that we have that is our strength. And a lot of other types of joy that we pursue is often a choice. And I think that is something that I'm convicted of every day, because pretty much every day there's some sort of fire, some sort of argument, some sort of whatever between a parent and a child, or between the kids, or even between the parents, that we're having some, frustrations. And it's always like, okay, we've got to step back and just change the environment and just change the situation and choose a path right now that will be joyful. And I'm reminded of a friend of mine who was talking about her homeschooling and struggles, and how it was just no one was having any good time at any point in the day, and everyone was just ready to be done and throw in the towel. And I was like, go get a clean slate, like clean canvas. You need to stop everything, spend a couple days, like seriously detox, just take some days off together and only do things that are really enjoyable. Like, even if that means you do things that as a homeschooler you get to do that, normal kids would never get to do. Go to Starbucks. These are young teen girls. They would love something like that. Is like the best day ever. Like, go out and get a Starbucks drink or whatever it is, or local. I would say go to a local coffee shop, maybe not Starbucks. But like, go do something super fun and get a fun drink, if you're not too strict about the corn syrup. But like, just have the experience and do something where like, wow, if this is homeschooling, this is awesome. Or this year we decided to do all of our book work in the afternoons when we have like busyness, and Eden, who does gymnastics, she has to do like her more book work stuff, like homework, when she gets home from gym in the afternoon. But we try to do like fun, beautiful things in the morning, like art and projects and things that usually get put aside because it takes so long and so much effort to do all the academic-y stuff that you feel like you have to do, that you never do the make up a song and record it, or we're gonna go today. We went and gathered leaves and made leaf people on paper, like just. And I will say I use Pinterest for things like that because I'm not crafty. But as far as the perfect houses, yeah, I'm with you on that. But yeah, I chose this year to just design our whole day differently, where we do really nice things and we do our reading in the morning, because in our house with so many strong-willed personalities and temperaments, most days end with, okay, we did the bare basics, we're done. Let's just free time now because I'm emotionally done dealing with this day. So I chose to start days with worship music, or really, nice background music on, and candles and flowers. And I'm easing up on letting them have maybe more treat type foods in the mornings, or just try to make it really beautiful every morning. So that's how we start our days. Obviously, we have our devotion time, and There's the enemy's in there always trying to just make it difficult. And it's like, you set up this idea in your mind of what it's going to be. And then the actual day comes and like, it all falls apart. But, like today that was happening and I'm like, that's it. Everybody, you're going on the walk with the dogs with me to take them out. And what ended up happening is I remembered that art project where you collect leaves and glue them on paper to make people with them. And that's what we did this morning. I have no idea if the kids did their book work yet because they went with their dad for the afternoon. And that's okay. I feel like we redeemed a very stressful morning and we redeemed it and spent the last hour and a half before we had activity stuff in doing something really lovely, and everyone was having fun. And
I think that's a big deal for us. We live in North Idaho now, and so our sunny days are far and few between now. So like today's a really beautiful day, and so it was like, go out and enjoy the sun, because fall is it's a beautiful season, but winter is like knocking. And so it's about getting outside right now. And the other day, Jack went outside and he found that we had an apple tree, that we've never known that we've had this apple tree, this wild apple tree that's, up on our acreage. But we were just like in awe that we've lived here for almost 5 years and we had no idea that we had this apple tree. So we were just like, oh my gosh. So the kids were like, can we go pick more apples? And, it was just really, really special. So I'm all about them going outside and playing
and letting that be school, or when the kids are younger, when they start fighting with each other more, which I'm assuming your kids fight with each other, but mine definitely do. There were some days where they were so enwrapped in whatever they were playing with their dolls and stuff that was homeschooling for the day. I'm like, I'm not breaking this up. This is too valuable, because in our family, our children being best friends is like one of our missions. We actually cultivate that our children are best friends. And so I had to let that happen. I'm like, this is part of our mission. This is important, not the math books, and that all comes right back to when you have purposes and missions for your family and philosophies behind why you're doing everything and what you're doing, you're able to let those moments happen and really make the most of them and feel back to that comparison feeling. You don't end the day going, wow, I did nothing, or we did nothing with homeschool. You actually did something that fulfilled that, the core foundations of what you want to develop, to cultivate in your family. So,
right. I won't say that my kids don't fight. It's just it's not as often because they're older now. I would say that James and Jane fight the most if they're going to fight, and it's just, they're the closest in age, but we don't allow teasing in our home. So that's, I think, also been kind of something that Chris and I started a long time ago. And that has helped a lot with just, it's like, we're all on each other's team, we're all on the same team. So let's get this done. And then, if they want to do something like once a month on Tuesdays, it's a homeschool skate. So all the homeschoolers go roller skating. It's super fun. But knowing that is like we just had it, but it's like, okay, so we didn't do as much schooling on Tuesday because we were there. So we got to all work together to, finish up what we need to do. And that always helps to like know, like, okay, I have something that I can actually work towards, because if you don't have goals, then really you aren't going to hit anything, and I think we've unschooled for a few years as well, where it's like, they're just going to learn by watching us, and like, we're going to do this, and that's all, then that's worked. But then there's other seasons of life where it's like, no, I really want to focus on math this year, or I want to work on writing, or, so we have goals that we've set every year, and, sometimes we hit them and sometimes we don't. And I feel like our life looks completely different than it did when we were in California. So that in it, we're a lot more, I will say, moving out of Orange County we've had to grow a lot as individuals, not just as a family, but like we had to become a little bit more hardy. And, you know, I think with the different seasons of life, seasons in actual weather, you know, in wintertime, you definitely slow down, and you're spending more time, you know, with the fireplace, and they have to make sure we have wood, and, you know, there's all these things, and we have to plow. So like, we're not going to get to math in the morning when we have to go out and plow. And you know, so it looks very, very different here than it did in California. So,
but that's setting them up for life. I mean, this is life. And when you talk to people, older people, or you hear, you know, when people talk about their final days of life, and people ask them, what do you wish you did more? What do you have any regrets? And it's always, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I made my marriage work. You know, these types of things, the things that matter most to people, these are things that you're cultivating in your family life. And these are the things that matter, raising men that are going to be incredible husbands, and an incredible wife with your daughter. And I do the same thing, you know, when I'm thinking about my girls, and just making sure that I'm trying to emulate, you know, a wife and mother that they might want to be. And it always goes through my mind that, look, if I don't get to a really solid Bible study day with my kids, at least when they woke up or in the morning time, they saw me in the Word first on my own, and I protect that time, you know, and they're at least seeing that. And, you know, but anyway, I think it goes back to that, the mission and philosophy for your family, that you're setting them up for a very full and beautiful life. And it's not just stupid work. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Life is beautiful. You said the S word. Good thing Jack didn't hear you. You know, something that we also do is we like to watch movies. I mean, winter's coming, and honestly, that's like our favorite part about winter is, you know, it gets dark here early, so we love a good movie. But you know, my boys love Jane Austen movies, which is hilarious. But I exposed them to, you know, it's funny, when they were really young, I got them to watch Sound of Music because I said it had a gun in it. and it does have a gun in it, but like, you know, I had to trick them, but at the same time, like, they love it. And we have these movies that we look forward to watching together, and it's hilarious. But yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, I haven't even had to teach my kids really like how to be a gentleman. I mean, I have, but at the same time, like, they know not to be a Willoughby, and they know not, you know, like they have these characters that, like, from watching Little House on the Prairie, it's like, don't be Nellie, you know, like, so, you know, we're not that family that doesn't watch, we don't have TV, but we have access to movies. But I think that if it's the right culture, you know, that you want to emulate, that it's good exposure to, you know. And I'm like, my future daughter-in-laws are going to love me, because my kids love Jane Austen, my boys, and like, they watch musicals, and, you know, they watch because they're stuck with me. Like, I look at, like, in general, I'm like, we're raising, you know, these children up, but I'm like, they're going to be adults, and like, I want to hang out with them when I'm older too, you know. And so I'm doing it as selfishly, like, I want to go to plays, and, you know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you're touching on a lot of, like, the Sally Clarkson mentality. In the Awakening Wonder book, she does discuss, you know, they didn't let their kids watch cartoons on Saturday mornings, and but it wasn't about rules for them. It was about just telling their kids, like, I want you to be fully entertained by beautiful artwork, and I want, you know, the reason why it's junk food for your mind and your heart. Yeah. And, you know, we want to raise you on things that stimulate your mind and your imagination and your heart and your compassion. And absolutely, whether it's books or just really good movies, we do the same thing. We've even done the Nellie thing from from Little House when the kids were watching a lot of that. Like, that's what Nellie would do.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's great because, you know, they can totally connect with it. And even today we're reading Secret Garden, and Martha gets mad at little Mary because she won't eat her food. And Martha has all these siblings, and she says, well, my brothers and sisters have never felt a full belly before. They don't even know what it feels like. And, you know, it's where this good stories, good literature, good movies, it helps them bring real life issues into their heart. And
right. Well, and I think that's those stories, those characters are going to stay with them forever. So we do a lot of G.A. Henty. My kids love G.A. Henty. They have like audio dramas and stuff, but you know, I've
never heard of that.
G.A. Henty. So he's an author. He wrote a lot of historical fiction in the 1800s, but they're really, you know, there's always, if there's not a love story, you know, there's something, but it's all character building and stuff. But the Heirloom Audio puts a few of the books into like a dramatized audio. So it's like a movie, but it's audio.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they would spend their own money on these. Like they love them.
That is so cool.
But yeah, I mean, when they were young, it's like, I didn't care if they're listening to something audio or playing, like as long as they, you know, if they were doing Legos, I'd prefer them to listening to something but I feel like imagination is the most important part of childhood. And if they don't have that, then they're going to go in. It's like, how sad. All of a sudden they had to become an adult, you know, when they were 10, you know, because they had all this adult world type stuff. And it's like, no, you're supposed to be a kid. Let them be children, and, you know, and let them think that they could slay dragons. And, you know, like Jack wants to be president of the United States, and he's, you know, so I'm like, I have my work cut out for us. Like, but I'm not going to squash it and say, well, you can't be president of the United States. You know, it's like, that's something he wants to do. He wants to make movies.
Oh gosh, what was on the wall at my gym today? It was like, winning isn't what's important. It's wanting to win. That's important. Something like that. It's the will behind it. And there's science behind that imagination point with kids. There's actual science to prove that expanding a child's imagination and playing and, you know, all of that stuff that you learn with the preschoolers, well, with their, you know, manipulatives and stuff, it continues all the way through, even with adults. I love a good children's story. The little children's books we still read make me cry. I'm like crying. Yeah. You know, they're wonderful, even with the pictures. But I feel like you learn so much more when you work on that imagination and play. And I'm even touched. I hope she doesn't hear this because she'll be embarrassed. But like, even when my 12-year-old gets into playing dolls again, because she's always back and forth at her age now, you know, if wanting to or not, but it's so precious that, you know, that's not dead yet, that desire to play and play with her imagination and stuff, or at least, I don't know if it's more about getting them dressed and doing their hair, but anyway, well, we have to kind of close this. We could talk for hours and hours, I know. Because we do, especially when we're visiting in person. But my final question, which I didn't send to you, so you're on the spot with this one, is what is the most recent thing you did that totally filled your heart with joy?
Is this homeschool related?
Anything. This is life. This is I have a question. I developed a question that I would like to ask anyone that I do a podcast with. So this is kind of like my final question.
Well, I mean, I just got back from camping. So I think that was something that I did that, you know, usually my husband does all the camping type stuff when we go out together. He's the one who does the fire. And so I think knowing that, you know, I can do stuff by myself, or not by myself because I was with other ladies, but that I still have that sense of wonder myself. was a big deal for me. You know, I think that we get lost ourselves in these seasons, and I just felt like it got to experience a sense of wonder this weekend. So it was really special for me. So it gave me joy just to, you know, set up my little trailer and make it all cute, and then go and hang out with older ladies, and it just filled my heart. So I would say that.
Well, that gave me chills. I love it.
You know what? And that's our whole thing is, you know, this season is so short, and we're going to have time for ourselves if, you know, when they're all out of the house. Like, so I feel like, you know, to encourage moms that, you know, if we do it well, we will enjoy our older years. You know, we really will enjoy our children, and they'll come back and they'll bring their, you know, their children to us, and it'll keep going. You know, we talk about that generations, but, you know, my kids know that I love vintage stuff. So like it just was so cool to see them, be okay with me going to, like, okay, Mom, it's all set for you. You know, we loaded your bike, and, you know, it felt really special. And I don't want to feel like, oh, I had to get away from my kids. It wasn't about me having to escape. It was just me knowing that, you know, that I wanted a taste of what it looks like, and to spend time with older ladies and to glean for a little bit. I think that's, you know, as moms in this, you know, season, it's like we don't always have those mentors with us. So it's just nice to hear older ladies and them talk about, and there was a lot of ladies who were widows. And I think that also made me come home and appreciate my husband, because it was like, wow, you know, this is everything can change tomorrow. We're not promised tomorrow. So enjoy today. And really these relationships are what matters. You know, this is what we're taking to heaven. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, you taught your kids something very important by doing this trip for yourself. And I hate to say, like, you know, for yourself, because self-care is important, but self-care is also caring for your family, more than just that it's refueling you. And it is important for you to have that time and that type of experience, but you're teaching your kids to do things like that. You know, it was such an example for your kids to see you go out on your own and take an adventure and spend some time.
Yeah. I rode 20 miles on my beach cruiser to cross the lake. I know, it was so fun and I mean, it was lovely.
And you came back with stories to tell that I'm sure.
I know. Well, and these ladies they were like, "Where's your helmet?" Because I had just a cute hat on, and I'm like, "We're in Idaho. We don't need helmets."
I love it.
It's just a suggestion.
And story time with your kids too, by the way, all these things, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Janie she's like, "I'm gonna be a Sisters on the Fly when I grow up." I'm like, "Yeah."
So cute. Well, this was so much fun. I just love.
Thanks for inviting me. I know when you asked, I was like, I feel like I'm the worst one, but okay.
No, because we have so many amazing people to listen to that are out there speaking, but I think it's more of these real life stories, because obviously if people are asking me, I'm like, ooh, I should hook you up with my friend Michelle, because she'd have way better things to say than I do. So
you know what? I think even though this is our 12th year, I think I was counting. It's like, I don't feel like I've arrived. I don't think I ever will. I really feel like, cause you know, we're in different seasons, you know, our kids change, our, you know, our state changes, like we're in a completely different, territory, really, you know, uncharted territory. So every season looks different. I have John just turned 19. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing now. Like, do I parent him? Do I not parent? Like, it's so weird. But like I said, we're living life together, and at the end of it, I'll be able to be like, okay, you know, I hope I can be like a Sally Clarkson someday and share. And
even as I listened to Sally Clarkson's podcasts and things, I think she's in the same place. You're always moving. It's always changing. And I know the older I get, the more unsettled I feel. And I think it's because heaven is our home. And so we keep looking for home here, and that ends miserably.
I think you just have to have a little bit of a sense of humor and a lot of grace, and give others grace, and give your kids grace and your husband grace, and just love deeply, because that really is ultimately the biggest gift of all, is to love your kids enough to let them go.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Glory Talk, a podcast ministry of Glory Dance. Visit our website, www.glory.dance, for our membership site info, our mission work support, and also our email list sign up and social media links. Get caught up with all the Glory Talk podcasts of the past, and also stay tuned for the next podcast coming up soon. May God richly bless you and your family today. Bye.